Okay. Hi, everybody. It's episode 38. Man, we're like starting to get up there in numbers. That's amazing what happens when you're more consistent. Today, we are actually recording 2 podcasts in this sitting. So you're going to see us look the same. And you're going to see that we are reflecting on something very cool that we just did, which is Ann and I were both in Boulder, Colorado at the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit, year 3, which was so sweet. And I just loved so much about it. And it was much different than I was expecting, although I don't know that I had tons of expectations either way. But I think it really, I was saying this to Ann earlier, when you go to these kinds of things, and if they're good, you leave inspired and energized, but you also are left with lots of questions, which I think is what it really means to be in kind of a growthful experience or growthful environment. And so we are going to be talking about 2 things that came out of our time at the CES. And today we're talking about Ryan Holiday's Stoicism and the link to a healthy nervous system. So if you don't know Ryan Holiday, he has written many books. One of his most popular is called The Obstacle is the Way. He also wrote a book called The Daily Stoic with an accompanying journal, which is the Daily Stoic Journal, which I got like 2 years ago. And I have the book on my Kindle, but I had no idea who it was written by, like no association. So I didn't even know he was going to be there. So he was there at the summit and presented. People were certainly stoked. And I was like not making the connection. I was like, I don't know who this guy is. But then there is his book at the book table. And it finally dawned on me. Anyway, it was a fabulous presentation. And I have really been thinking a lot about particularly the 4 virtues that he presents from the Stoicism philosophy and how the nervous system or a healthy nervous system supports those 4 virtues. So we're going to be talking about that today. And this is really the first time synchronously that Ann and I have really gotten to debrief about the summit, besides on our car rides back each day. So I'm excited about that. And welcome to Ann. You're looking beautiful in your red lipstick. I always think that's so flattering. One day you'll have to teach me how to do that because I always seem to get it all over my face every time I've tried. So we're going to start with what's in process, what's in progress, and I'm going to hand the baton over to you to start us off.
No.
You got it. Yeah.
All right. The mirrored capacity of Zoom or of working online. So what we are involved in today is, and what's in progress and what's in process for me is it is a brand new summer. My children are getting older and we're all getting older. And I'm seeing some of those shifts. I think a lot of what I enjoyed about spending time with Chantel in a growth experience that was live and in person. I think the car ride, we did have some really beautiful conversations. And I think one of the things that I am noticing more and more also with the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit is just how much they came back and shared, hey, it's so important that we have time for people to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just so important. It's almost like, and a lot of people I remember were speaking at the conference and they're like, we love the people on stage and we really love the people here that are sitting at the tables.
Yeah.
Because the conference was like a bunch of round tables and then a small stage. Mm-hmm. That felt, intimate and and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also a lot of plants.
Oh my God. That is a whole thing. I want to have a whole podcast about biophilic.
Yes.
We should invite, gosh, do you remember her name?
I don't off the top of my head.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We met this amazing young gal who owns a business, and she was talking about being biophilic driven. So Anne cracked the nut on that one. She was like, in love with or a love of nature, essentially, right?
Yeah, biology. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's talk about that at some point. But anyway, I don't want to derail you. Keep going.
Yes, I think what's in process, I think when it's something I thought that I would have more time to my own self to kind of process what happened. And the season that Chantel and I's lives are in right now is you come home and you immediately step back into your family, your family obligations, your family joy, and your family not so joy, stress.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to normalize that for anyone listening, that is just what that's just a season. I mean, I lived many years without young children. I became a stepmom at 31 of an 11-year-old, and I was slowly kind of getting to know her over time. And then I didn't have children in my life till I was 35. So babies. So it's just been, I've had a long season of my life without children. And now I'm in the season of my life. So I just want to speak to those entrepreneurs who are juggling motherhood or caretakerhood, because I'm definitely feeling the sandwich of, I also checked in with my folks when I returned.
Hmm.
They're doing quite fine, but they are aging, and it's just something that's appropriate to do is to check in with them now. So I think my what's in process and it's like the last time I was at a conference, I had my stepdaughter and my daughter, and it just didn't feel quite. I think maybe I was pregnant, and so I only had one older child and
Hmm.
not three people I'm supporting, just emotionally. So it just was a lot easier, and the experience of being able to kind of process it. But at the same time, I feel like now everything that I do has much more potency because the time is more limited. So it's like, what's the action that I'm going to take? And I'm just really riding high from all the connections we made.
Yes. Yes. I don't really know. There's so many things I feel like are in process and progress. Um, I think one of the big takeaways for me from the summit was with two things that I think go hand in hand, which is, am I really doing the best that I can? Like, in what areas of my life am I always doing the best that I can? I feel really clear about that. And in what areas of my life am I riding the natural, how do I say? Like, I'm just kind of coasting. Like, I'm the kind of person who's always just been really good at pretty much everything. And I realized that there are places in my life where I'm just like not really excelling, right? Not really doing my absolute best. And that was an interesting kind of question to come away with. And in relationship to that, I did pick up Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way book. I actually bought it for my son who's graduating high school in 3 days. And I bought this cool 3-pack. We should be getting paid like an affiliate fee or something. For
Let's start.
yeah, for my ex-husband, it's a 3-pack of Ryan's 3 books, Obstacle is the Way, something about the ego, and something about stillness. So Father's Day is coming up and my ex's birthday is coming up. And so I bought that for him. So I've been reading Obstacle is the Way. And I just think it's so, again, it was just like in the same vein, like kind of a wake up call, like, what am I just bitching and complaining about and whining about pretty consistently? And can I see it in a different way? Like, what's the opportunity in it? And this is not a new concept for me. I've been through lots of hard things and I've turned lots of things around into positives. And, I'm aware of the growth that happens. But I just think it's pretty relevant for me right this moment with my daughter becoming a preteen and identifying as a preteen and making me want to blow her up, most days. And then my son, this like interesting metamorphosis between I'm not a kid, I'm becoming an adult, I'm not an adult. I'm no, it's like very strange. And there feels like there's a lot of obstacles in those relationships. So that's what's in process and progress for me. And yeah, it's honestly like kind of emotionally exhausting, but also really worthwhile. And I'm like committed to being in it, no matter how, uncomfortable it is. So there it is. So with that, I think we should dig into the relationship of the nervous system and nervous system health to the four primary virtues of Stoicism as Ryan Holiday lays them out. And they are, I'm going to have to go to my notes, courage, self-discipline, wisdom, and justice. And justice, the way I interpret it, is also like it's like your values, right? Like your integrity. But we're going to talk a little bit about each of these things and how having a healthy nervous system, a regulated nervous system, allows us to live into these virtues. So the first one is courage. So I'd be curious, Anne, when you think about being courageous in your life and in your business, what is that? What's your capacity for courage when you have a regulated nervous system versus a dysregulated nervous system?
Yeah, I'd love to weigh in on that. Thank you. I'm going to share a couple of when I was listening to Ryan Holiday, I was just like writing rather furiously. So I'm going to just share a couple of notes that when he spoke about how he spoke about courage.
Yeah.
And when he said, when life is hard, right? Because life can be hard, they're called to courage. And then will we do what our business needs, what our family needs, will we rise up and be courageous?
Yeah.
I think he sort of spoke about the time of World War II and people, coming out of, I don't know if he mentioned this, but like coming out of the flu, I think they called it the Spanish flu back then, that, had taken over, and then World War I, and then being in the Great Depression. And like, it was hard. It was really, really hard. And then they asked, American soldiers to go 3,000 miles across the Atlantic onto the shores of Normandy, right? And we're D-Day. We just recently celebrated that. So I think that's another maybe reason why he brought it up at that time. It's just so, I think it's like, what's that courage that you have? And one other piece that he mentioned that I really liked when he was speaking about this concept of courage is, I think it's like more like, with courage, is life happening to you, or are you what's happening? Right? Are you what's happening in life? And so those types of concepts just made me think about, well, what are some times that I have risen up in courage? I would say within my business, definitely the time with COVID, having a brick and mortar business that was based in California that was shut down for 13 months was, it was scary, and I had a team to lead, and I co-regulated with my brother, who is very good with technology and was just able, within 3 days, we had 7 teachers teaching and, servicing over 50 clients for private Pilates and small group Pilates while we were all shut down. And that felt, I think that was a courageous move on my part in the business that I had at that point. And then we also had to pivot what we called at that time the master's program, the Embodied Business Institute. And we used to have an in-person component. And then during the COVID lockdown, we had to change to an online. And we made a lot of changes, and we made them quickly and we made them fast. And I think the courage really came from the fact that in those moments, I really had people to co-regulate with and to feel safe with. And so that was also obviously Chantel. And that she and I were able to just say, okay, how are we going to do this? What a gift that our business is already hybrid.
Yes.
think about it. Like, okay, we've already been doing this. This is something that's in our wheelhouse. Um, and so, yeah, I think too, like being an entrepreneur for over 20 years, it takes and we were speaking about how sometimes to be a successful entrepreneur, there has to be some sort of naivete about how hard something's going to be. But when you've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, the naivete is no longer there, usually.
Yeah.
And so where does that courage come to keep going?
Mhm.
And for me, I'm no longer working by myself. I'm working in partnership and co-regulating consistently with you,
Mhm.
Chantel. So I think that that is one place where I find the courage is speaking to others and being with others.
Yeah. When I think about my ability to be courageous and my nervous system, I just am aware that when I am dysregulated, it's like what makes me dysregulated is a lack of confidence or a sense of self doubt. And then that makes me not feel safe. Right. So to be really clear, like our nervous system is constantly unconsciously assessing risk, whether that's environmental risk, it's a risk between ourselves and another human being, and it's perceived or real. It doesn't matter. Or if it's a sense of a lack of safety that's coming from our thinking about a situation or a context. So I think when I don't feel confident, I become dysregulated, and then I cannot be courageous. I cannot, put myself out there. I can't take risks. I can't be vulnerable in a way. And so for me, courage comes from a sense of a settled body, one that is able to be open and curious and perceptive, but there is a strength in that when you are regulated, when your nervous system feels safe and your confidence then supports the regulation, then courage is easier. There's like, because to me courage has always been like this deep, like confidence, right? Like a deep well that I have in me that I can tap into, and I either do tap into or I don't tap into. And when I'm regulated, I feel much more tapped into that well, right, of courage and confidence. When I'm dysregulated, I'm on I'm like on survival mode, right? And it can be difficult to it consciously and intentionally, take unfamiliar or uncomfortable action, which is also one way I think of courage, specifically in relationship to entrepreneurship. So let's talk about discipline or self discipline. This is the one that really got me thinking about the relationship of the nervous system to discipline. So, when we talk about being disciplined, it's a matter of, can we hold the greater objective or the greater good as like tangible enough, present enough to make choices that get us there, right? Like discipline is our ability to take the same consistent action over and over again so that we can achieve something, right? Whether it's be something, do something, or have something. And when Ryan was talking about discipline, there was one piece that really came up for me, which is just like recognizing emotional dysregulation, right? When you, or just habit of thinking, habit of mind. So you're trying to be disciplined to, this is a thing that we practice all the time, reaching out to new people, right? Developing leads, like putting ourselves out there. Like there's a discipline to every day connecting with new people to share our work or offer support or offer, whatever. Um, there's so many things that can come up to dysregulate you, particularly emotionally, right? Like you just don't want to do it. You're too tired to do it. You're hormonal and you don't want to do it. you've had a tough day and you don't want to do it. Like, I think about discipline as really when I have been most disciplined, it has been times where I can regulate myself emotionally and I can have the feeling, have the thought, recognize it, acknowledge it, but also set it down because I am aware of, I don't want the relief that comes from not doing it in the moment. I want the relief that comes from doing it over time. That's a very mature, emotionally mature choice, I think. And I struggle to do that when my nervous system is dysregulated, when I feel overly emotional, when I feel overly tired, when I am lacking confidence. And all of these things are a byproduct of a dysregulated nervous system. And so that's my relationship to discipline from a nervous system perspective. Like when I feel steady, when I feel clear, when I feel confident, I'm in alignment. My biology and my psychology are steady. Discipline is much easier. It's like actually simple, which is a very strange thing to say because I'm certainly no stranger to those moments where discipline is just not even a thing. What
Yeah.
what what is your
Well, I mean, I'm
relationship
just
to
thinking
this?
of you and how many times you say to me, I'm going to go to the gym first and then we'll start. Like, we'll start the work day. And I'm always like, gosh, you're so disciplined.
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes it's the domain, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, certain
what
domains are
domain are
easier.
you? Right.
But I mean, to that point, I think the thing that works for me is I am able to tap into like I know what the future experience will be like, and that regulates me. I know that I will become a better version of myself if I exorcise some of the dysregulation out. And that's like there's a lot in there because I think movement obviously it can be very regulating for us. But
Yeah. So I think for me, it's like the self regulation begets nervous system regulation.
mm,
So for me, when I'm self disciplined, it like self regulation or regulation seems to emerge within my nervous system because I'm like,
mm,
oh, I'm doing the things. And then I'm like, oh, I did it.
yeah,
And then I feel better. In fact, I consistently do not feel good when I don't do the things that I feel that are disciplined within my business. Like I would say the marketing piece is a huge piece for me, tracking money, sales and leads and things like that. Like that feels very, if I am not connected to that, I tend to feel dysregulated around my business. And so these are some of the things I want to add that we go into in depth in our nervous system map.
mhm,
Um, as I'm thinking, as I'm just getting deeper and understanding my own business nervous system map, which is something that we do offer to our clients. But just this way of, yeah, I think it's funny because, Chantel and I, we have different experiences with this work.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So the third virtue is wisdom, and I was just looking at my notes to see if I had written anything down about wisdom. I have something about our job is to be good and to do good. And then also, how do we test if something is true? And then I have a note about rupture and repair, which is a concept that I first learned about from Deb Dana, who is one of the leading experts really in integrating nervous system regulation into the world, specifically into the world of therapy. And when I think about wisdom, I think about, yeah, how do I test if something is true? Like instead of just reacting to something, wisdom, I think for me is the space between the experience of something and then the responding to the something. And how much space do I take, and what questions do I ask? And when we are experiencing, or when we have experienced over the course of our lives, short or long, this ability or this like cycle of rupture and repair, what I mean to be clear is something goes wrong and then we remedy it, or we are hurtful to somebody and we come back and we apologize, or we have an argument with somebody and we can go away and come back and we can repair, right? We can make amends. We can have a more rational conversation. We can be curious. There is, to me, like all of the ability to do all of those things, to say, how do I test if this is true? What is true about this? And can I recognize when I've fucked up and I need to come back and repair? Like, what is my responsibility? It also makes me think of, we're going to be talking about this in our next episode, increasing entrepreneurial capacity and this idea of taking 100% responsibility. There is wisdom in that, right? It is beget by wisdom and it breeds wisdom. And I think, just very simply, wisdom can, for me at least, be defined as the ability to respond wisely instead of react. And that is such a simple and yet not easy concept of, can I recognize when I am activated, angry, upset, frustrated, annoyed, irritated, triggered, afraid? Can I recognize the experience within my body, how that's affecting my emotions, how it's impacting my thinking, and step back from it enough, pause, that I can acknowledge that simply my body is trying to tell me something, but I don't have to do anything with it. I can decide, I can choose what to do with it. That is a regulated nervous system at work. And to me, that's the birthplace of wisdom. Outside of course, experience, of that practice over and over again. It's coming up for you.
It's just, yeah. It's funny because sometimes I feel like, again, I can be very aware of my nervous system, of the dysregulation in a certain domain, and then I get thrown into another domain and I just don't have it. It's like I have I don't know. It's like I'm not aware of it, and I really want to get better at that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's true for all of us. We do have blind spots.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would say one of the things that I learned about wisdom, as one of these virtues, and that you want to practice these virtues when something challenging comes up in your business. That's like sort of the goal of understanding these virtues and how they interact with the nervous system, is that one of the things he wrote, and I didn't take many notes on this section because I think I was just like nodding along in agreement with what he was saying, because he said, well, you're always learning. And I was like, oh, that's totally me. I'm a lifelong learner. Like, I feel safe when I'm learning. I feel safe when I'm in a learning container. It has a clear beginning, a clear end. I know how to study. I know how to learn things. I got this. Like, there's a lot of familiarity to it for me. So wisdom just felt, when I was learning about it in the context of the virtues, it just felt very, very familiar, which for me, and I think sometimes you can have something that is familiar that is like, ultimately a dysregulating thing. And sometimes you can have something that it feels familiar that actually is regulating, right? And so I think the wisdom felt good there, certainly in the always learning piece. And I think for me, when I look at my business and the businesses that I've owned over time, I think I've always been pretty good about saying, well, this is the problem. What can I do about it? Like, it's a learning opportunity. I absolutely feel that I'm way better at that now, that I know a lot more about business, because
Mm-hmm.
what I used to know a lot about, and what I still know a lot, is about the body,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how to support people in the body. And so now, like, once you know how to do many different things, and so I think that's where the learning comes in. You learn how, is that all of a sudden it just gets easier to come at it from a sense of curiosity and from a nervous system perspective of a place of regulation, and just say, well, something's wrong. I know 7 different strategies of how to fix it. Which lever, as I think this through, which lever will I pull first?
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. So the final one to wrap up this conversation, thanks to Ryan Holiday, and he's got a new book coming up. I think it just came out actually last week while we were at the CES. Maybe you can pull up the name of the new book, and
I will do.
I'm going to do a little do a little promo for him. Is justice, and this for me is a slippery slope. I'll have to tell you, because it's one of the things that I can get so dysregulated by and so fired up by. I have very, very specific arenas in which I just am off the charts. I get angry about and dysregulated about when I see a lack of justice. And I think for me, this is really a work in progress, because, like, when I see people being taken advantage of, when I feel taken advantage of, when I feel like people are disrespecting me or disrespecting others or bullying, I have very, 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 very strong feelings about the injustice of it. So my relationship to justice is actually from an injustice perspective, where I can be incredibly dysregulated. Oh, and then it becomes difficult to respond wisely. It becomes difficult to respond, not necessarily with courage, but maybe a precursor to courage, which is patience. So I have to, I struggle with this, because I think I'm just in a time in my life where I'm pretty intolerant of people being unkind and people being unkind to other people. So, what would I say about, I mean, certainly my experience of when I am regulated, I am just more level-headed. I am just able to make wiser choices about what is justice, how to, if it is my position to, dole out justice, which it's not really, but I think in little ways, all day long, whether we're settling a sibling squabble or, we're trying to find the justice between maybe a difficult or uncomfortable conversation between lifelong friends. It's really about, like, the truth is that when I am regulated, I am much more open-minded. I'm much more patient. I'm much more empathetic. And when I am regulated, I can kind of occupy a space of confidence and courage, and just be in the process in a clearer way, which I think leads to a greater outcome, a better outcome, a more just outcome. So that's my take on it. What's your take on it? I'm curious. This is a kind of tricky, big one I don't think we talk about very much.
Yeah, again, I think I don't have as many notes on this section because I think I was listening so intently, and I think I'm noticing when I agree, I take less notes. It's
Yeah.
like, yes, I agree. Um, I think he was really talking about how justice is a noun and not a verb. So it's not this concept of something like justice will be done,
Sure,
or
sure.
um, it's more like it, because the concept is like, if anybody goes to the law, it's almost like you're already outside of justice because the law even had to be brought into it. Like,
Yeah,
justice is
right.
really about your ethics
Mm,
and about you doing the right thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that is actually the title of his book that's coming out. The Right Thing Right Now, Values and Character. And that really struck a chord with me about doing like a lot of times we'll say we'll do the right thing later.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Once I've reached X amount of money, once I've achieved X thing, and it's almost the same thing as like we'll say I'll relax or I'll feel better once I'll feel better in my business once I hit XYZ milestone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just found that to be because I'm always the person, or I was definitely brought up to be like, recycle that one can because every can matters. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and I get just torn into pieces when someone's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's just me. It doesn't matter if I don't water my lawn because coming from a drought stricken state like California, it's like, well, you know, the personal use of water is so insignificant compared to the commercial use of water. Why should it even matter that I'm watering this tiny little strip of land or, grass in my suburban lawn or something? And it's just like, there's something about, and I think listening to him helped me understand like why I guess I would use the word triggered. Like I get like when somebody makes that argument, my behavior doesn't matter because it's so insignificant. It matters because ethically, because in terms of my sense of justice, it is still the wrong decision. And it's interesting that I brought up environmental reasons for those two,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it's like it's just I don't know. I felt that his definition of justice was just very supportive and very. I was able to really nod along with it. And agree with the concepts of that sense of justice.
Yeah, I mean, you're just reminding me that and why I have written down on my notes in justice/integrity is for all of the reasons you were talking about. Like it's a matter of personal ethics, right? Do the right thing now. Thank you for bringing that back up into my attention.
Yeah, I've one other thing to say too
Yeah,
about that because you just got me thinking about it too. It's like, so he's like, when you run a business, which we've all, if you're listening to us and you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a side hustle or a major business, like you are kind of thrown into constantly making choices around justice. Do I make the book? Like he gave an example of how he used to have his books created by a company that
yeah.
was printing them out of Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
When the Ukraine became invaded by Russia and Belarus's complicity with Russia, he felt that there was like some tension there with his ethics about where he wanted his book printed. Or it's like, if we're going to buy books and give them to new clients who work with us, do we want to buy them through a big major conglomerate like an Amazon, or would we want to buy them from our local bookstore and
Yeah.
then send them off? So we're constantly, as entrepreneurs, making choices, whether it's big or small, based on a sense of ethics, where I think the argument has always been made a lot of times, well, it costs more for me to buy a book from my local bookstore and give it to my new client than it does from Amazon, and it's not as convenient. So I will choose to make that choice once my business is so big.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas his argument is like, do the right thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because that his book just came out. I think it's right on pre-order, so I can't go in and read it. But I mean, I imagine the argument is like, because once you start a behavior, then it's hard to change. And you can move that line of deciding when you want to change. When are you going to change
Yes.
that? Right. Now you
Yeah.
got to go back and change it. It's not just baked into your systems in your business, no matter how small or how big it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truly. Gosh, something else was coming up for me when you were talking and then I lost it. Yeah, I guess I was thinking like, well, like if you are making the choice not to do the right thing right now, the probability of like there are lots of other people also who are making that choice. And if and then it's about the combined effort, or the combined impact that really is what makes the difference. So your one can does matter, your one lawn does matter, because everybody is likely to be having, the more people that have that same orientation, that the impact grows. So this is one of our longest conversations I think we've had. This is super juicy. I'm going to wrap us up and just say thanks to Ryan Holiday and the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit and Alex Raymond, who was the host. He's the founder of a company called Capta. We're actually hoping to have him on the podcast here in the next few episodes, so stay tuned for that. And we will drop all kinds of relevant links in the show notes, so look for those. And join us for episode 39. We're going to be talking about how to increase entrepreneurial capacity through embodiment. So if you want to just click right on over to that, or if it's not released yet, make sure you stay tuned. Thanks for this great conversation, Anne. It was a lot of fun to explore the nervous system through this lens of Stoicism. Okay, thanks, everybody.